Can I ask all the speakers of today to come to the stage? Please come to the stage. We will not eat you. And we will hold a short panel. We have the experience from the last year that the questions are coming, and thanks God, there is no hate compared to the last year. And we know that in Slovakia, when you do things honestly, you connect people, you create community, and you do meaningful things, there are always people that start to hate you just because of that. And it means that you are on the right path. So as iCARI, you are on a good path, and hate is a part of Slovak folklore. And those are the people that cannot do what you do. And let's get going to questions. We can start. Anonymous. Maybe the question is for you, because you are a data person. Why the data on emissions per individual countries are not stated per capita? Wouldn't that be a better indicator or more fair indicator? I would recommend that you study the research paper that is placed on our website. In the section of analysis, that it's explained on 30 pages. So very simple answer from the perspective of simple rule of how to best measure the emissions against the population. It's a very inaccurate way, because it doesn't matter how many inhabitants live in any country, for at least it doesn't matter for the atmosphere. And today during my presentation I showed you the diffusion and the difference between the drops and the spoons. And for your information, the 24 islands of Palau in the Pacific, they are, on the highest level of per capita emissions. If we deleted them or erased them from the Earth, the atmosphere wouldn't even notice. So per capita emissions, I really don't recommend using them. If you want to talk about that, having a beer, that's fine, but definitely not in the scientific area. Another question, when it comes to the percentage of emissions that are created by a building, Mr. Rampan talked about 35%, but they are only on the level of 11. What is the reason of repetition of the 35%? I don't know, but people like to repeat the myths. I don't see any data reasoning for that. But one thing is how much emissions is connected to buildings, and another one is about the energy efficiency of the buildings. In Slovakia, it is completely useless to deal with it, because the energy mix of the country is on the level of the median of 48, 49 kilowatt grams per hour. And this 35% of emissions, if it was for the whole world, it would be useless again, because each country has different energetic mix, so we cannot do it individually for countries. So that's why it's important to define always to define this percentage for specific region. Mr. Diedaczek, according to media, there are many startups that can already produce green and blue hydrogen. So how it is with the production of hydrogen? So you don't need a startup for green or blue hydrogen, because we already know it for a couple of decades. The problem is for how much. Please raise your hand if you think that hydrogen is produced through electrolysis. No, or maybe just 5 to 6%. The majority is made from natural gas because it's much cheaper. So we know how to create or produce the hydrogen through electrolysis, but it's much more expensive than if produced from fossil fuels. And it shouldn't be a commodity, it should be energetic hydrogen. And now we are getting, with this commodity, we are getting to even higher price. So from the energy perspective, it's meaningless because you spend lots of energy. The second thing is that startup can do it in a small amount, but the problem is when I want to do it through renewable sources, I have intermittent energy supply, and the only possibility is to have iridium, but this element, there is a shortage of it. So the European Union should be purchasing iridium for already 12 years, and iridium also produces lots of emissions. So this is a beautiful example of we are not capable to scale it up, and also to create plants, power plants to produce hydrogen in this way, because that would be useless. So for now, it's meaningless. What is important is to calculate the overall ROI of the whole system, of the production of hydrogen. The hydrogen as such is good for nothing if you cannot produce the energy. The hydrogen is a great carrier of energy. Yeah, the startups usually do it because they can draw money. Mr. Pavelka, how it is possible that dark roof delivers less heat to air than plants? So there are three reasons. The first is emission rate. The black roof has higher capacity, so the more the roof is heated, the more heat it produces, and then the area. So it's like with the coolant in our car. So it's small, and the transfer of the energy through the plants into the outdoor air is much more efficient. So is that enough? If you are here, whoever asked the question, if you are here, please ask additional question if you need to. Mr. Chovanec. The deposit system of plastic bottles, did it help to increase the recycling of these materials in Slovakia? We talked about it. I'm thinking about who asked. It wasn't me. So everybody is general after the war, and we can talk about this deposit system. It definitely works. We had similar discussions here before launching the system as in the Czech Republic. When it comes to percentage, it's not high because it's lightweight material, but definitely it helped to increase recycling, but only in the unit of percentage. But the main benefit is the limitation of littering, meaning they are not in the nature. The same applies to cans. So yes, it is one way how to take the material out from our population, and the material is returned in a big amount. So, but what's next? I think that this system will be transformed in the future for the next streams. European Union pushes us into the system of of returnable bottles. You can see it in Germany. And the whole legislation of European Union to introduce the system by 2029. I think the system works well here. Yeah, if you don't think about machines getting stuck and everybody needs to wait for the service, I will only say that in waste economy there is no direct proportion. It always works in a way that the more you manage the waste, and the more these waste managers process the waste on the way to the landfill, the more expensive it gets. So the separation and recycling might be cheaper. And our main goal is to decrease the landfilling, to increase the recycling, and to help the nature. I would note something sarcastic, but the question was for you. Mr. Simons.
Question. Why are there so many different climate models, and what makes the interpretation of the current output so challenging? I don't understand that question, but it's okay.
I understand it.
Okay.
Luckily. Yeah, so there is, of course, it's a very broad question by itself, because, of course, like what makes a climate model is, of course, first the assumptions underlying the model. So over which period do you model the climate? What are your assumptions, especially about the future? Because if you model the climate of the past, you know, of course, what happened in the real world, and you can just adjust your model to what happened in the real world. But to look at the future is more difficult, because we don't know what the emissions will be in the future. We don't know what the concentrations of the different greenhouse gases will be in the future. And as I explained during my presentation, the greenhouse gases are cumulative, so they increase every time you emit more, the concentration increases. So these different scenarios, so if we emit a lot or if we emit very little, it doesn't matter much for the climate for the next 10, 20 years, because it doesn't change the concentration very much. But what's very important is these aerosols. So how much is the climate cooled regionally? For example, if China, what many climate models got wrong, because they got the assumptions wrong, the underlying assumptions, is how much China was emitting all this sulfur. They thought China would keep burning a lot of coal, which they did, but they also thought that this coal burning would emit a lot of sulfur. But because of I think many of you remember the Olympics in China, when there was a lot of air pollution, and I think they stopped driving half the cars for every day. They could only drive with a certain license plate. So then they changed this, how much sulfur the coal plants could emit, by installing these scrubbers. They use this sulfur, these gypsum, and they scrub the sulfur. So then Chinese emissions plummeted. The same happened now with shipping. We heard about hydrogen. One important use of hydrogen is taking sulfur from fuel. So I've been at multiple oil refineries, and there you see that there's a lot of sulfur there. You smell the rotten eggs, and because sometimes some fuels have 10% sulfur inside. But now with the hydrogen, they can take it all out, and there's not coming in the air anymore. So, and then if you don't take that into account in your model, that this regulation comes, the reality doesn't suit the model outcome. And of course, there's many different teams in many different countries with running different models. But as I showed you, all these models are wrong if you look at the radiation fingerprints and the rate of global heat uptake, which of course eventually takes a while for all this heat to accumulate, but that will result in that all the temperature increases is wrong. And we already see that very clearly in Europe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anonymous sa pýta, ktoré údaje...
What data on emissions are considered to be the most appropriate for assessment of climate change and creation of precise climate models? So if I made you a presentation on what a chaos in emission database there is, you would understand that this question doesn't even make sense, because it depends what you want to monitor. Because if we consider about CO2, which is the best known, in Slovakia we have the national authority, the Slovak Meteorological Institute, and they create a new inventory of emissions every year, and they say, I send this to UNFCCC, and if you see into this database, you see the different figures for the same year, because UNFCCC releases this data with a 4-year delay, and meanwhile the methodology and framework have changed, and therefore there are different figures for the same year. And if you check the database of the research center of the EU, which is also based on the UNFCCC reports, you will see completely different number for the same year. Also, if you see the version 10, which is from the last year, 9, 10, 8, 7, you will see completely different numbers. And I'm not even saying what people see when they see it through Google or Element systems. So, I mean, I always ask, what data, where do you have this data from what emission, from what year? And I haven't even started talking about G reports. So, what data on emissions are considered to be the most adequate? If I may add, there are 2 questions regarding climate modeling. For high schoolers, I have a 45-minute presentation about the modeling of complicated systems. So if I summarize it first, from the physical point of view, each model is wrong, but some of them are useful. Model is always just a model. What does it mean, a precise climate model? It should correspond to reality, which we cannot do for the future. And if we do the projection for the past, it doesn't really work. And the rule of any modeling is that you can describe the system by equations, and we are the victims of general education. So you just get the equations and you have to solve them. And if you describe the complicated natural system, you will find out that you cannot really solve it, and you just cross out, and you do it for so long that you finally manage to solve it. And then you have mathematical procedures how to really solve it and get a sensible result. And depending on what mathematics you use and what you cross out, you are testing what will work and what will not. So according to how you cross out the models, you will get the different models, which will never be able to describe the whole as such. So therefore, all of those have to reflect the climate. And if they didn't do it, they would be wrong. However, it doesn't mean that you cannot describe it by other variables. So models will never be precise, because we cannot really, we don't know the exact mathematic description, and climatologists don't even know whether they have all equations. Then you need to have completely all input data. Currently, they are just being collected about the chemical structure and heat structure of the ocean. Without those, you cannot get a relevant answer. So all of these models are more or less wrong. And on the other hand, I don't want to make fun of the colleagues who are doing it, because they are getting better constantly, but we have to work on it, and you have to approach it with a lot of a free approach, and you have to be very humble when presenting it. I would like to know who will teach at campus and based on what teachers are selected or will be selected. I believe that according to their professional level, because if we take this Stanford or Silicon Valley that we mentioned, or Yale, and even the Prague University, I think there are really the best capacities and the most professional people, and I think we could eventually do this in Slovakia, and we could finally have there the best professional, not based on some nepotism or favorism. Yeah, we have our project EduClimatics, which should serve together with the Association of Towns and Municipalities should start the education process about the climate. And we spoke about it with Marian, how it works in the Czech Republic, and so we have learned our lessons from critical events, so we are still searching for the resources. We have a very good purpose and a team, but first we are trying to get the input funds and to be able to start this project. So we have two questions here. It's about the same. Thank you for the presentations, Mr. Rapan. What is the solution instead of Green Deal? What should EU do when it's not possible to agree on emission reduction with other world's countries? And also, another question, Mr. Rapan said that in 2024 the average temperature in Slovakia dropped or rose by 3.2 degrees. So what should be the world solution? So I'm not against the Green Deal. That's not true. However, if you cannot implement it, then it's going to be a disaster. So if we want to have some measurable targets, because to achieve a better future that cannot be measured, so it must be really something, some parameter that you can measure. So we will drop the temperature by so many temperatures. So, and nowhere in these documents regarding Green Deal are any particular information. Therefore, there is a lot of space for manipulation. I'm not saying that it was deliberate. Maybe it was just inexperience or anything else, but these documents should never be passed, not like from SME, but definitely not from EU Commission or European Commission. And what should EU do? So, well, what should people in the EU do? It's a better question because they are paid for it. So let's just be specific and very particular, because that's also a question what the states should do, and let's be again more particular what ministers should do. So if it's not possible to agree with other countries of the world, it doesn't mean that EU should forget about it, and I mean, I don't care, and until you reduce the emissions, I'm not going to do anything. No, we should continue in the reduction of emissions, because once the economy collapses, nobody will ever bring it back. It will be a huge problem. So there are many adaptation mitigation measures that can be solved without anything. Let's say the retention of rainwater can be done without anything, or irrigation for cooling. I mean, nice things. So let's just be sensible and not political. And right now, a Green Deal is very much political. This the second question was about this 3.2 degrees. That was well,
several models related to
we
the
have
average temperatures of surface.
Again, we have to see which of the models we take and against what year it is positioned, this increase of temperature. So if we start with 1850, if we start with 1850 to 1900, and it's absolutely chaotic. And of course, there has been some increase, and according to the last data, the last time I checked, when before my departure to New Zealand, it will be again the record, and we are very much on the record side now, and we are rising temperature a lot, and we are not done yet. So Milan showed it very nicely in his materials, and we have to be ready that we should forget about 1.5 degrees or 3 degrees in Slovakia, because we need to see what's going to happen in 10 years. And right now it seems that the temperature is only rising. Well, maybe we will plant some citrus trees or fig trees. Waste recycling is stagnating in post-COVID era. Why? Well, the rise of energy prices, a lot of raw materials from Asia. Also, we don't have the emission tariffs, so this primary raw material is cheaper than the recycled even. And after banning the export to China, we are going through the renaissance, I would say, and not everything that is declared recycled is actually recycled. And many times in these yellow bins, which we recycle, there is like minimum material which can be recycled for normal money, and then there is a question whether the rest ends up in the landfill, or at least we produce some fuel from that. So the energy sector and the huge supply of the primary plastics from China and India. They attend all the recycling conferences, so those are the reasons. Another question? Could I find the list of the recommended woods with the least risk from the quality point, from the air quality point of view in urban environment? And there was also a question whether Sandra has a boyfriend. Well, regarding the official list, I haven't seen such a list of woods, even though I was addressing this topic in my thesis. But most of the time I used the studies and the research, so I am not aware of such a list. However, we need to assess it individually. Also, the urban area can be different in various countries, or even one particular urban space can have various functions or appearance or whatever. So there is no general application, and I don't know whether you have any information. Yes, well, if I had better memory, I could answer it. I know there is a little booklet, and I even have it in PDF in my computer. So, I mean, if the author of the question is here, please address me and I will try to find this booklet for you. Okay, just one note regarding the ZIVO and the incarceration. Denmark overestimated the capacities for incarceration, and they are going to close down the 30% of them, including the decrease of capacity of the one which offers the skiing possibilities. Well, this is a good question. We have this investment purpose, which is also quite public already, and it has to do with capacities. Capacity is, from my point of view, it's very important when we consider zero. I'm sorry that I didn't manage to do it in my presentation, because in incineration, when in Denmark they considered 300,000 tons from England. We saw that in England, that the number of ZEVO facilities has been increased, and it means that they are not exporting the waste, and the question is what they are doing. So this is also a good note for this investment in Bratislava, and we have to be very careful. And I will just add, I mean, this should be decided by the ministry. But as it had been said, this decrease of capacity in Denmark is used as an argument against new facilities, but Denmark is not going through any change with in waste management. They were counting with the import of the waste from England. Great Britain substituted the capacities, but generally they continue in their strategy of unrecyclable waste and its transformation to energy. And one last question. Mr. Balaš, you as a company focus more on research or business? We are trying to combine both. Very nice answer. At the end, we couldn't wish for anything nicer than this very smart answer. Thank you for all the questions. Those that haven't been read, you can discuss with the wine or over the glass of wine. We will be happy if you spend an evening with us. And tomorrow we are continuing. So I would like to thank all the speakers, ladies and gentlemen, for their perfect presentations, and also all of you who remained. All of the registered participants have the archive from both days available. Just give us 3 weeks time, and you will get the information via email how to get it, and you will be able to check every presentation in Slovak or English. So I think this should be standard at every conference, so that we don't have to require something like this, but it should be normal. And we would just would like to say that yes, do this online versions, and I would like to say hello to our online participants, because if you cannot travel, you can just stay at home or in your office and see us like this, because this is another option for people. So thank you, enjoy this evening with a good wine tasting. There is also dinner ready, and please eat everything. We don't want any rest, and so that we don't have to recycle. And that's all. Thank you very much for staying with us. Tomorrow we are continuing, and tomorrow's agenda will be as full as today's. Sometimes people think that the second day is easier, but not here. We mix our presentations and we have a lot of surprises for you, so have a nice evening. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a nice evening and see you tomorrow.